Who is Dr. Elijah?
Who is Dr. Elijah? I'm still figuring that out. I am still figuring out who Dr. Elijah is. Today, Dr. Elijah is a black trans man who is happily out loud and proud.
Awesome. So, what are your pronouns?
My pronouns are he, him, and his. Thank you for asking. What
Absolutely.
are your pronouns, doctor?
He, him, and his.
Awesome.
So, tell us about your experience. How did you become Dr. Elijah?
Well, I wasn't always Dr. Elijah. I started my transition in 2018, really 2017. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin as a closeted lesbian. Was at church every week and every summer in vacation Bible school, and went to the military when I was 17 years old. My mama had to sign the paper so I could get in, and I served 25 years in the closet.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was the best time and the not so good times of my life. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
So,
You're welcome.
what was that? What was the defining moment relative to your identity? What was that aha moment that made you say, I have to live and walk in my authentic truth?
So that's a great question. So I've always prided myself on 3 core values: authenticity, transparency, and integrity. And as a preacher, that's what I preached about, right? And in 2017, I was in a play at Emory University Theater, and there was a moment in the mirror, literally. I was playing a non-binary character and a trans character. This is before my transition. And there was a moment in the mirror, and the line was, maybe it's supposed to be this way. And I looked at myself in the mirror, and I could have won an Oscar that night, because I literally looked at myself in the mirror, and I paused, and I saw myself as a child in that moment. I saw the little boy that had been hiding for 48 years. And I was like, you know what? When I get up off of this seat, because I was seated looking in the mirror, literally, I said, this is it. I cannot live life in silence anymore.
Wow. So now, first of all, you just said 48.
Yes, I'll be 52 in September.
Wow. You don't look it.
Well, thank you.
I know that we say black don't crack, but your black really has not cracked at all.
Thank you,
So
doctor.
how do you feel about the evolution of what we consider gender norms today?
It is indeed an evolution, and it's been an evolution of understanding for myself, right? One of the reasons I didn't transition before now is because I didn't understand what being transgender was. I didn't know what being trans was. And, once I transitioned and I realized that even being trans, there's a spectrum of gender identities even in that framework.
Yeah, and that is something that I'm coming to understand. I met you recently at a LGBT music fest in Cancun, and so definitely was inspired by your story and by the fact that all of the brothers that were on the panel were men of what I call men of a certain age, but nevertheless still thriving and going forth in purpose. Was quite inspiring to me. So you're definitely inspiring to me, and you're walking in your authentic truth. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So describe your relationship now and then with your family. And
Wow. So my relationship, I'm divorced, so that piece of my family is past tense right now. Part of my evolution, if you will, on the gender journey was I married as a lesbian. And so my former wife married a lesbian. So when I transitioned, she basically was like, I married a woman. And I was like, well, I'm not a woman anymore, so like, how is this gonna work? And so we're very cordial and respectable to one another now, but it just was it was just not conducive for our friendship relationship anymore.
so it was the whole notion of perhaps I married a woman, and if I wanted to be with a man, I would have married a man.
That's exactly what she said. I didn't want to say that, so I'm glad that you said it. That's it. That's exactly what she said. And at the time, I was very offended. I was like, well, wait, what? I thought we said, to death do us part and whatever. But now in hindsight, as I've grown on my journey, I understand that was her truth. Now I'm walking in my truth, and I have to respect and honor and cherish her truth.
Wow. How long were you all married?
Oh, we were married. By the time we were divorced, we were married 5 years. We were together almost 8 years.
Wow. Wow. And so sometimes that journey when you think you're walking in the same place and space, and then something happens where the other person grows.
Absolutely.
And you have to, how can two walk together?
Yeah.
Except they agree.
They have
and there
to
was
agree.
no agreement going on.
Right.
Wow.
That's good. I love how you say that, preacher.
Takes one to know one.
Yes, that was
Takes
good.
one to know one.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you are a former U.S. vet. Thank you again for your service.
You're welcome.
You are a preacher, teacher, and reacher.
Yes, yes.
You are also an author.
Yes.
In which you're reaching and through this book.
Yes.
And again, I was telling you the story earlier about how I had the opportunity to read this book on the plane, and I think people were looking at me crazy, like he's reading a children's book, this grown man. But tell us about Madoodle.
So Madoodle is the story of a 10-year-old girl named Madison, an African-American young girl who is navigating the journey of her Uncle Pete, who used to be her Auntie Mary, her favorite auntie. And so she's navigating this whole gender transition, and she basically just wants to understand. She just wants to understand, and she wants to make sure that she doesn't lose her relationship with who used to be her auntie, the man becoming the new Uncle Pete. She wants to make sure that they still have their relationship. I call her the love superhero.
Yes, yes, yes. One of the things that you mastered in this book was taking what were by adult standards is a very complex issue, and you simplified it so that a child could understand it. I was like, wow, once I read it. Is it that simple?
It really is that simple. What you just said reminds me of and I call myself a pastor, preacher, but not a theologian.
Got
so
it.
I don't know this particular scripture, but there's a scripture where Jesus talks about becoming like children. And so that actually, as I wrote this book, that's how it was simplified for me, and it gave me a different understanding of that scripture. As adults, if we just become like children, if we remember what we knew when we were children, we would realize that not just gender transition, but life really is that simple.
Wow, wow. So why is it important for us to have conversations like the one you had in this book? Why is this important?
It's important because the time that we're in, I feel like we're in a time of our consciousness expanding, and the trans and non-binary experience is a part of that expansion. It's important to have the conversation, specifically in the African American communities, because there's still so much trauma associated with sexual identity. We can't even get to gender identity until we talk about sexual identity. And so one of the reasons I think that the children's book, the reason God gave me to write the children's book, is because it simplifies it, and it really, I think it takes the barriers down that if you put it in a dissertation format, if you will, it takes the barriers down for people who really genuinely just want to understand, and it's a tool to just begin the conversation.
What would you say to an individual who, whether straight or gay, that finds themselves attracted to a trans man or a trans woman?
What would I say to them? I would say good on you. Like, that's okay. Yeah, I think that we are in a time and advancing to a time where it's really not about sex, it's not about the flesh, it's not about the body. For me, I'm attracted to energy.
Yes.
I'm drawn to spirit. Because I could see the finest male or female walking down the street, but if their energy is stank, I'm gonna keep walking. Yes. Right? So what I would say to them is allow yourself to be free, allow yourself to feel, allow your spirit to flourish. Because if there's an attraction, there's a reason for that attraction.
So how do you navigate your masculine and feminine energy? Because, we all, whether we want to admit it or not, whether we are the most hyper masculine guy or the most feminine woman, we have the masculine, the feminine operating within us. So how do you navigate that space?
I navigate that space now based on the scripture, and that is, I believe, Galatians 5:28. Maybe. But it basically is the scripture. I told you I'm not a theologian, right? But it basically is the scripture that says there's neither Jew nor Gentile, nor slave nor free, nor male nor female. And that's how I navigate my life. I float through life as a spiritual being.
Absolutely.
I might wake up feeling like Tasha, which is my old name, one day, and I might wake up feeling more like Elijah another day. Today, I just am, right?
Awesome.
And that is the evolution for me, is to getting to I am.
I find it very interesting that people oftentimes want to say that, use that scripture, that in God there is no male nor female, but yet we can't understand, we can't seem to get out of that binary construct of male and female. So, wow, that's absolutely amazing. So, you're originally from Milwaukee.
Yes.
I'm certain that there was probably the LGBTQ community there was interesting to say the least, or limited.
Very interesting and limited.
Okay. So what brought you here to Atlanta?
I came here for corporate. I came here almost 22 years ago for a corporate job. And one of the reasons I came to Atlanta is because at that time in Milwaukee, I did some research in management jobs. African Americans took up 3.2%, I'll never forget the percentage, of management jobs. I worked for the phone company. I could count on one hand the number of managers. And I was like, this is not, where I want to be, even as a black person, as a black woman at the time.
So you saw more opportunities here in Atlanta than you were seeing back home at that particular time?
Absolutely, and it's cold.
So the heat brought you down.
Heat, that's the truth.
The heat brought you down. Okay,
yes,
awesome.
Yes.
So where do you think this city is headed relative to a queer presence?
A queer presence, I would say queer presence is Atlanta.
I love it.
Like 3 years, 5 years from now, like I don't believe we'll be able to differentiate people walking down the street. It's just, it is what it is. We are who we are. And I personally think that the heteronormative perspective is a part of the queer presence.
Yes.
And so I believe that. I mean, it's Atlanta. It's the face of Atlanta, the queer presence.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, because it is the presence of Atlanta, and again, going back to what you said, that in him there is no male nor female, no Jew nor Gentile, that it is just all a space in which we all navigate, and whatever your experience is, that's your experience.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much for your time. We just so glad to have you, and I wish we could keep this conversation going, but we will in the panel discussion.
All right, I'm glad to be here.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Tell us where we can get Madoodle.
Madoodle is available exclusively on Amazon, and now Madoodle the New Kid is also available.
Oh, there's a second book.
Yes, we introduced a non-binary character in the second book.
Awesome. Well, guess what? I'll be purchasing the second book.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate you.